Interval training outside. In practice, doing an interval training session outdoors is not all that simple. Inside, on the indoor trainer, you can see your goal and performance at any point in time, because you don't have to watch the roads and the traffic. In ERG mode, it's only a matter of pedaling. You don't have this luxury outdoors, but with good preparation and these tips, you can successfully do your interval training outdoors. 1. Choose the right route. Decide in advance where you're going to do your intervals. Take into account the direction of the wind. High intensity intervals with the wind in your back is very difficult and dangerous in traffic. Further, you don't always have to do a perfect loop. For example, if you have found a good and quiet stretch of road or a small quiet course, ride it back and forth. This may sound boring, but it allows you to focus on the job at hand and will deliver better results. 2. Never shorten the rest intervals. Always make sure that you stick to the prescribed intervals intensity. It is fine to make the rest intervals a little longer. For instance, if that allows you to reach a better location to start your next interval. Never shorten the rest intervals, but be flexible with extending them. Only in short intervals with many repetitions in a row, the precise execution of effort and recovery is important for the right training stimulus. This applies, for example, for 40-20s, 13-15s, 15-10s with 5 to 15 repetitions. Here it's all about not fully recovering before exerting yourself again. You should always try to complete these kinds of sets, which often last around 10 minutes. 3. You also notice that the intervals are often scheduled in the middle of a training session. This is not really necessary and you can change this according to your route, climbs or wind direction. In general, it is no problem to move the very high intensity intervals to the earlier part of your training and move the lower intensity work towards the end. You just make sure your body is sufficiently warmed up before you start your intervals. 4. You don't always have to put a workout on your cycling computer. Back in the days when bike computers weren't as sophisticated as they are today, it was still possible to do an interval training. By knowing what your zones are and remembering what the plan is for the day, it was not that complicated. You could even write the instructions on a piece of paper and stick it to your top tube. Of course, the bike computer is really helpful, but don't become a slave to your Garmin or Wahoo and start your intervals on a location where you really shouldn't, just because your bike computer says so. Tip 5. Train in the spirit of the workout. This tip also applies to the more experienced cyclist. If you have been adhering to the training schedule precisely, you can start playing around with the intensity a little more. For example, in a group ride. If there are long tempo blocks scheduled, you can do them by doing some extra pulls on the front without paying too much attention to the length of the interval and the recovery time in between. You can try this when you are more experienced and have a good feel for what you are doing. Tip 6. If you're going out on a ride with other people and you're planning to do an interval training, make sure that the other person is aware of this. It is often assumed that the other person won't join you in those efforts, but it is actually a lot of fun and challenging to do an interval training together. A training session with sprints is even better to do together than on your own. Just let your cycling mate know well in advance so that they can adjust the intensity of their workouts in the days before and after. 7. You do not always have to do an interval training. A long and steady endurance workout without intervals is often a good addition to short intensive work. The Join Cycling app also encourages you to do group rides, which the app takes into account and adjusts the training schedule in the days before and after. Just make sure you have the right balance, because if you never do any intervals, you will find over time you won't improve much.